How's it going, everyone? And welcome back to another episode of In My Opinion. And this time we're going to be talking about the Zandvoort Grand Prix. During practicing, we obviously, between the couple of days, Kimi tested positive for COVID. So it meant that Kubica was coming in as a late addition and right in at the deep end. I think he came in from Friday into Saturday. So considering, I think he actually did a pretty good job, really. Other than that, Hamilton obviously had the oil pump issue where he stopped on track and didn't get much running in FP2, but he's experienced enough to really, that probably won't affect him all that much, to be honest with you. But other than that, pretty same old, same old. The Alpines were pretty quick in testing, but couldn't really translate that into qualifying. And for qualifying, Max on pole, not much of a surprise. I felt like he was the guy to beat heading into qualifying, and to not even in Q3 deploy his DRS showed the gap that he really had. Hamilton was only a tenth, just under a tenth off, half a tenth off, but at the end of the day, I think if you pop the DRS properly and it actually opened up, then you're looking at least a couple of tenth and a half faster than he even was at the time. So Hamilton should be pleased. Bottas was half a second off Hamilton, which wasn't really good enough, to be honest with you. I think if Perez and Red Bull hadn't made that mistake of not going out again in qualifying and ending up right at the back, I think you would have seen Perez in the mix because he had very good pace in the race. So to be honest with you, I think it was as expected, really. Perez was a bit of a shock, but Red Bull, I think, held their hands up and made a mistake. They didn't send him out again, and they paid for that. Massive shout out in Q3 to Pierre Gasly and Antonio Giovinazzi. Gasly P4 in an AlphaTauri, miles ahead of Tsunoda, who has been retained for another year, which we'll get into a little bit later in the video. But Giovinazzi as well did a fantastic job. P7, I think he's equaled his best result in qualifying in his Formula One career, so a fantastic result for him. A bit out of the blue. He hasn't really overperformed that much this year or even last year. A couple of good results, but not in that sense. So a fantastic result for him, and he was the one carrying that team throughout the weekend because Kimi obviously had to take a step back and isolate, and Kubica knows the team, but he doesn't do enough driving over these cars to really be on the pace. So great job from him, and particularly Gasly as well. We had the two Haas cars squabbling over positioning. There was a bit of miscommunication between the team and both the drivers. And next thing you know, as that's going on into the final couple of corners, Vettel's come flying in on a hot lap and nearly taken them both out. I had to get out of it, back out, and not really good enough from my perspective. I know the FIA will probably look at that pretty heavily. Maybe a fine for Haas. I don't think necessarily the drivers should be totally blamed for that. It is their job to look in the mirror, but how quickly cars come up to you at that speed, they wouldn't have noticed because they're too worried about each other, who's in front, who's behind, blocking each other, and no communication clearly from the team, or there hasn't been communication from the team to let them know that somebody's on a hot lap. And they're very lucky that Vettel didn't collect the both of them, because if there had been a situation like that and there was a mistake and Vettel's locked up and hit somebody, massive fines are going to be given. So luckily that didn't happen. But it's quite clear that the Haas communication isn't there. And it's happened quite a few times over the years with Haas. So I think that's something they really need to get a lot better and really improve upon, because it's happening quite a lot. And now there's a bit of tension between the drivers, because at the end of qualifying, Nikita Mazepin was absolutely livid with Mick Schumacher. And we don't know the behind the scenes. He reckons that it was his turn and it wasn't, and all this sort of stuff. But at the end of the day, they both made a mistake, and you've got to sort that out as drivers. If it's your turn or not, that's up to the team to decide. But at the end of the day, if you feel like you're being messed around, just go past them and get on with what you're meant to be getting on with, rather than worrying about somebody else. Felt like Ferrari had really good pace in qualifying. Sainz obviously crashing in FP3. I felt like he did a really good job. Obviously, the team got the car back out with a fair bit of damage to it, so great job by them. But also, Leclerc and Sainz were neck and neck. Maybe Sainz, considering he didn't have FP3 to really dial in for the circuit, did a really good job, but they had good pace here. They were quick around Monaco. This sort of circuit seems to really suit them. So you can imagine, much like they were relatively quick at the Hungaroring too, I think it's clear to see that car suits a certain type of track, but I think their pace this weekend was definitely commendable. Heading into the race now, and from the start, Verstappen got a pretty good getaway. There was a little bit toing and froing in the mid-pack with Alonso taking a bit of contact. I think Ocon got involved as well. I think with Giovinazzi, I think it was. I can't quite remember, but mega move around the outside of, I think it's turn 3 or 4, that banked left-hander where Alonso went right round the outside as everyone was trying to defend, and he overtook a couple of cars, and he's the master of the first lap. He is just exceptional at always picks the right point to be in, and he hasn't lost any of that over the years either when he spent a bit of time away from Formula One. He's come in this year, and I think he's delivered from the offset, and as far as opening laps go, there's no one better on the grid in my opinion. Further into the race, to start at the front, it felt like Max definitely had the run on the Mercedes cars on the soft tyre. Bottas miles off it. We'll get into him in a second, but the top two battle was starting to get interesting. So after the pit stops, they left Bottas out super late to try and get in the way. And there was a moment where Verstappen was behind Bottas. Hamilton was only a second and a half, within a second almost, of Verstappen. And I think that was the moment that Merck needed to pit Hamilton, go on to maybe the hard tyre rather than the mediums, and get that track position, because it's so difficult to overtake a Zandvoort that track position would have been super, super important. And at the end of the day, they didn't have many opportunities, and that was that one moment for me. And I believe that Toto Wolff and the team came out and actually said that they made a mistake, that they should have boxed Hamilton in that moment, and they didn't. And it almost probably cost them the race win, to be honest with you, because Max on that hard tyre was coming under a bit of pressure from Hamilton. I think on the harder compounds, the Mercedes has a little bit more legs, particularly in that situation at that time, but definitely made a mistake there from Mercedes, because they had that opportunity and they didn't take it, which is very rare for a team of such success. Moving up the grid, Gasly in P4, a mega result for him. I think he's just going from strength to strength, and I don't know how long he'll last with AlphaTauri, not because they'll get him out of there. He's outperformed his teammate by an absolute mile. I think Tsunoda will come good, to be honest with you, but it's going to take a bit of time. Gasly, on the other hand, how long is it till an opening comes up that he could then take? With Daniel Ricciardo not performing on McLaren, do they get rid of him and bring someone like Gasly in, who is performing and is in form at the moment? I mean, Danny Rick's talent is undoubted. He's a fantastic driver, but it's not really worked out so far. So does Gasly start to look for other options? Potentially maybe at Alpine once Alonso leaves, but apparently him and Ocon don't really get on, so the team dynamic might not be the best there. It's going to be interesting to see over the next few years where Gasly goes, because he's probably up there with Max, Hamilton, and probably Norris as one of the top 4 or 5 most consistently delivering drivers. He's outperforming that car by an absolute mile, and I think kudos to him. To me, he's been the performer of the weekend, really, along with Max. Heading into the midfield, it's a shame because the battle was actually quite interesting. Following it afterwards, I was kind of looking through my Twitter, through different clips, and I saw that there was a real battle in the midfield. We were watching Hamilton and Verstappen kind of keeping their gaps, Verstappen then driving away, the fastest laps, all of that stuff. But Alonso and Sainz were having a great battle, and Alonso ended up getting past Sainz in that midfield fight. I do feel like Ferrari had a great weekend, but Alonso was a real good performer this weekend. I think qualifying was decent. I think they could be probably happy with that. Maybe Alonso always wants more, but in the race, his quality and racecraft really came in, and it was a shame that we didn't see any of that. I feel like it was so focused on the front guys that we didn't see any of the other battles going on, and for Alpine and Ferrari, those positions make a massive difference at the end of the championship with their positioning. Heading to the back of the grid now, and on the opening lap, the two Haas drivers had a bit of a to-do with each other, so you would have seen it. If you haven't, I'll kind of explain. So Schumacher's got a really good run on Mazepin. He's pulled to the inside of the corner as he's come onto the main straight, and then Mazepin's just really aggressively turned in and blocked him off. I'm not saying that you can't do that. He's chosen his space. He did it quite late, and Schumacher had to back off the throttle. Now, he didn't get a penalty, so I don't believe he deserved a penalty, but I think that's a showcase of how maybe those frustrations from the day before are starting to boil over in that team a bit, and how long is it that Ferrari keep Schumacher in that space. We'll get into the driver rumours in a minute, but Does he move over to Alfa Romeo, which has been rumoured a little bit, to get out of that situation, help his development even further, and particularly with someone like Bottas there, where he could really learn a lot and deliver on a more consistent basis. Overall, I felt like it was actually a better race than I thought it was going to be. I really enjoyed watching it. Heading into the next round, it's going to be interesting to see how Monza goes. For me, in these videos, I'm going to start doing a driver of the weekend, and for me that was Pierre Gasly, and I will also give it to Max Verstappen. Winning your home Grand Prix, pole position, led the most laps. He was supreme all weekend and dealt with the pressure really, really well. It was a very mature performance from Max Verstappen, so I have to give it to him. But aside from the top two teams, whoever wins the race potentially, I think Pierre Gasly was the star of the show. He delivered lap after lap. I'll get into a little bit of the driver market now. So obviously we've seen Alfa Romeo have confirmed Bottas for them on a multi-year deal for next year, which I think is a good move for Bottas. I think he needs to get out of Mercedes, out of Hamilton's shadow a little bit, and playing that puppet role, let's say, of toying around with where he is on track to help Hamilton rather than to help Bottas's race himself. Who's going to be his teammate? There's rumours that Mick Schumacher might take Giovinazzi's seat. Obviously, Gio did a great job this weekend in qualifying particularly, and he got a bit unlucky in the race where I think he had a bit of a tyre trouble. I think he had a slow puncture, so they had to box him, and he ended up going backwards quite heavily. He delivered very well, but do Ferrari move a Ferrari Junior to what was essentially the Ferrari B team and Alfa Romeo? I think they'll want to do that. I'm not sure whether Giovinazzi is delivering enough for them. He's no longer a driver with potential. He has to be delivering week in, week out, and he hasn't quite done that up against Kimi. With a spare seat at Mercedes, I think at the moment, it's not been announced as I'm filming this, but George Russell, it looks like he's going to be the one to take Bottas' seat at Mercedes. Fully deserved, in my opinion. I think he's outperformed that Williams. The Williams has got better, so he's been able to deliver those performances as well, but he's been streaks ahead of his teammate Latifi, who I believe is going to get a new contract as well. He'll be extended. So at the end of the day, I think George definitely deserves it. Mercedes will be looking long term. They'll be thinking, who can we get in now for when Hamilton leaves? We've got a leader in the team, and George Russell is going to be that guy. And I think also next year he'll give Hamilton a few headaches. That's for sure. I think he's certainly capable of doing it, but whether he delivers straight away, I don't think it matters. He's ready to take that chance, and it's a fully deserved seat at a top team for a young British driver. With George moving away from Williams, there's now a spare seat there. Now there's talk of Albon going, De Vries potentially. It's a little bit of a battle between Red Bull and Mercedes. Now, Toto Wolff came out and said that if Red Bull was out of contract at Red Bull, then they would definitely take him on board and work with him, because obviously Williams have Mercedes engines, which is why George Russell's there originally. So is that the situation? But realistically, Williams want the best driver, and I think you're going to get a good option in both. De Vries, Formula E World Champion, he's delivered for Mercedes-Benz recently, and I think he deserves that chance in Formula One that he hasn't had yet. Albon will be looking for redemption. He definitely deserves another chance in Formula One. It didn't quite happen for him at Red Bull. I don't think he was given enough time, in my personal opinion, but it's the way the world works. If you don't deliver, you're out. Maybe he was given less time than others have been. I don't think Perez has particularly done a great job this year. I think has he done a better job than Albon? He's won a couple of races, but I think Albon, given the time for another year, would have been doing slightly better than Perez is now. But he definitely deserves another chance. So who's it going to be? Is it going to be Albon? Is it going to be De Vries? We'll know, I believe, in the next few weeks. That's for sure. Everything's starting to tick over now, and the pieces of the puzzle are starting to be put in place. So AlphaTauri, of course, have re-signed both Gasly and Tsunoda. I think Tsunoda deserves the time. Maybe Honda have had a bit of a piece to play in that situation too, but it'd be interesting to see how he gets on. Maybe second half of this year, hopefully he starts to really perform a little bit better. But at the end of the day, if he doesn't deliver next year, he's been re-signed, he's got the time to improve. If he doesn't, then he's going to be out. And who's going to take that space? Dennis Hauger, I think, is the next sort of Red Bull Junior in line to take that spot. He's probably been the best driver in Formula 3 this year. If he moves up to Formula 2 with Red Bull, I think he's got a great chance. He's really delivered a lot of mature performances, but Does he need 2 years in Formula 2 to really prepare himself for Formula 1? It'd be interesting to see. Or does Tsunoda deliver next year and start producing and then make that seat his own? Thank you ever so much for watching this video. Let me know your opinions in the comments down below. I'll also be doing a watch along of the Monza Grand Prix like I did with Zandvoort over on Twitch. So twitch.tv/Sam Brabham. Check it out. Get involved in the chat. It's basically just like a watch along. So I've got this race on. Whoever's watching me will also have the race on, and we'll go from there. So talking all things Formula 1, reacting live to the events that take place, everyone's different opinions. So I really enjoyed having that whilst watching the race. It made me think a lot more about the race and engage with people, which I really, really enjoyed. There'll also be some gaming content prior to those sessions, but the main purpose is really watch-alongs of the Formula 1 and to get a conversation going amongst a cool group of people, and hopefully it starts to grow. So please give me a follow over on Twitch and like and subscribe to the YouTube channel as well. Be much appreciated, and thank you so much for watching, and I'll see you next time.